Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being in front of your screens on this 8th of March, the day of women's rights. We will have a discussion and a panel. I'm very honored today to host about Sudan and women and the revolution. The Sudanese Revolution was maybe among the most amazing revolution that happened in the Arab world in these recent years. It's not so much known because Sudan is not a country which is so much talked about, but this revolution was the most courageous, the most steadfast, because it took months of demonstrations, hundreds of dead people, to obtain at least the end of the military regime and the starting of something. We will discuss all that with Tahani Abass, who is a lawyer and who is a famous women's activist. And we will discuss it as well with Alaa, who is a student and a women's activist as well, and who became famous for her participation into the Kandaka revolution, the revolution of the Nubian queens. So you can also learn about this revolution on a film which is screened and which is online, Women on the Front Line, which was made by Mehdi Medeb and Sarah Kreta. And we will start our discussion with Alaa. You became the face of the revolution because of this famous speech you gave and song that you had in front of the big crowd, in front of the headquarters of the army on the 8th of April, I think. Can you tell us how you took part into this revolution, how it started? When did you decide to go to the street?
في البداية بترحم على شهداء ثورة ديسمبر المجيدة.
First of all, I would like to pay a tribute to all the martyrs of our glorious revolution of December. Without them, we wouldn't be here for our country, Sudan, and we wouldn't be waiting for freedom and democracy. And on the occasion of International Women's Day, I wish all the best to all the women all over the world. May they get their rights and be strong and brave. At the beginning of the revolution, on 19 December, I felt that I had a duty to be part of it. And given the hard situation of the country, we were all waiting for a sign to start something to serve our country. And since the beginning, I was part of it. And it was also the love and our loyalty to our country that made us strong and continue in our demonstrations and protests. And while we were screaming and protesting and demanding the fall of the regime, but we didn't know until when it will happen. Would it be after 1 or 2 months or 1 year? But we were convinced of our cause and were ready to give everything to our country. And indeed, we had casualties and victims, and many of us lost their lives and were sacrificed for the revolution for also the best of our country.
But was it difficult to explain to your families or to get the permission of your families, or you didn't ask for to go to the street and demonstrate? And was it risky and dangerous for young women or older women even to be in the streets in front of a regime that was using force, even bullets, against demonstrators?
كان من الصعب جدا في بداية المواكب والاحتجاجات إنه نقدر نطلع للشارع خصوصا.
It was indeed very difficult for us, especially women, to go out in the street and the protests.
المفروض إنه خلصنا دوام.
The first day of the revolution, we were at the university finishing our course, and our professor asked us not to join the protest outside, especially women, and because nobody knew what will happen.
فخطأ طوالي مع والدتي في البيت إنه بتقول إنه الشارع خطر المظاهرات.
But we realized that we had to be there, and even if my mother was telling me that it might be dangerous for us to be in the streets and that we might risk our lives, I told her that if all mothers kept their children off the street, nobody will be protesting. This is our duty.
ممكن تحصل بعدها من الاعتقالات اللي كانت بتحصل الضرب التعسفي أحيانا وصلت المأساة.
So I was not, and we were not afraid of death, but for all other things such as police arrest, disappearance, torture, and rape.
قادر يقدم حاجة للسودان قدم من دون ما يدفعنا أو يتوانا فإحنا كنا مؤمنين.
But I had faith in my cause, and it was difficult not only for us women, but for anybody else in Sudan, because of all the repression, tear gas, police violence, bullets. So it was dangerous indeed, but we needed to be there and also to sacrifice everything that we had for our country.
Thank you very much. Tahani Abass. Sudan has a long history of revolutions, 1964, 1985, and then 2019. Can you tell us the difference between all those revolutions, especially if we compare the role of women in those revolutions? What was new in this 2019 revolution?
طيب تحية لكل النساء في العالم وتحية خاصة أخص بها.
Greetings to all women all over the world, and especially women in Sudan.
Today, young girls and young women that have been able to go towards freedom, whereas they have been raped in the Blue Nile, in Darfur, and they have been also subjected to the massacre of June 3rd in 2019. We would like to salute as well all our activists, the Kandaka queens, the Nubian queens, all the feminist activists, our leaders and pioneers that have a great history of defense, like Mrs. Fatima Ibrahim. I would like to salute in particular Mrs. Fatima Ibrahim. She was a pioneer.
Fatima Ibrahim.
طبعا بالطبع يعني نحن
Of
كثيرات
course,
الحكي عن فاطمة
we talk a lot
ولسيرتها على
about
النساء
Fatima
السودانيات.
and what she did in
يعني
Sudan,
تخشان الورود تحديدا في شهر 5 عندما
especially in
نتحدث
May,
في شهر 3 عندما
in
نتحدث عن فاطمة.
In March, when we talk about Fatima, we think of her as the real Sudanese woman, a real politician, a real leader and pioneer. She is a pioneer Sudanese woman. She is from this first generation of women who have defended our rights and get a part in the political process in Sudan.
From the 60s.
Yes, the 60s in Sudan. At the political level, Fatima Ibrahim was a key figure in the political reform movement and the Arab movement. So she was a big female figure, and she was the first woman that has fought and she killed for our rights, the right to breastfeeding, the right to equal pay, and also the biggest right of all, which is the political participation. Fatima Ahmadi Ibrahim is the first parliamentarian woman in our region. She and her generation played a good part in us being candidates and voting later on, because in the past Sudanese women did not have the right to be candidates in any election nor to vote. So Fatima and all the other generation with her fought so that we can have those rights today. The feminist struggle in Sudan is very old. We can start by talking about the Kandakas in the northern Sudan as well as the Nuba mountain, and we had some social movements against the regime. The regime and the system in Sudan is patriarchal. It is a social patriarchal society based on some customs and beliefs inspired by religion and inspired by also some social norms that were really harsh for Sudanese women. This is why Sudanese women have been subjected to a lot of types of oppression. But we thought as women that we have to struggle, but step by step. A number of protests started in Sudan. First, in 1985, the Intifada, or the rebellion against the military regime, and also in 1964, another rebellion. And these were two major revolutions. They were really great revolutions. And they have been able to achieve a lot for us in the political process in Sudan, because they have allowed for us to start organizing work, at least in terms of women education and how to bridge the equality gap between men and women in Sudan. We can find Sudanese women to be on the front line of the struggle and those revolutions. I have to be very honest, and I can say that the revolution of 2019 is a feminist revolution. We were really terrorized. We have been oppressed by laws that are violating the integrity of women, and we have also been oppressed because of some norms and some beliefs and customs that have also violated our rights. Under Omar al-Bashir, the regime was really harsh against women, and it has really violated all our rights and our integrity.
Would you say that there was a majority of women in the demonstrations, which would be the first time in the Arab history, and maybe in the history at all?
This is true, and this is something good. Despite what the women have endured in the region, this is something good. We are here so that the voices of all women in our region be heard, if this platform allows this. This is one key success. The success of Sudanese women in the revolution was also a factor for women's success in the region. We have participated with our real motives and beliefs. Women in Nuba Mountains and Darfur regions, which are regions that have known armed conflict, and even in Khartoum, in all those areas, women have known real hardship that have affected a lot their rights and their lives, and this is because of what the old regime did. And we have also the public order law that has imposed on us what to wear, how we can move, where we can work. We have also the personal status law that stipulates in one of its provisions.
We will enter into the details of all those laws, and we cannot treat in one question. But I want to ask you, Alaa, as a young woman in Khartoum, how this public order law that was enforced by the Bashir regime, how did you live it on a day-to-day basis? What could you do and not do, and how the police was interacting with you about your clothes, about who you were sitting with? Can you tell us a little bit?
بصورة عامة
In
في
general,
شخصي ما تعرضت للقانون ده ولا تعرضت للمساعدة
I
من القوات
haven't
النظامية، بس ده ما
been
بيمنع إنه كانت الحاجة دي بتتم في السودان.
insulted by the
قانون النظام العام
public
كان
forces
بيتحكم
because
للجنود
of that
في
law,
الحاجة
but
جدا.
this law was really oppressive against the other women in
بيتحكم في
Sudan.
اللبس
This
في
law
مواعيد
imposed on
معينة
us a
بتكوني
lot
في
of
الشارع، ما
things,
تكوني
what to
براكب.
wear, where
إذا
we
كان
can go on
معاها
the
رجل
streets,
فهي
with whom we
مساعدة،
are.
الرجل
If
كمان
we have a
معاكي.
man,
فأنت
then we have
كرجل
to be
يعني أنا في
accountable
بلدي ما
because
ما
of
من
that.
حق
In my
رجل
country,
يوقفني، رجل أمني يسألني
no
ده منو ولا أنت ماشية وين ولا جاي من وين. أنا في بلدي أنا حرة
in my
أطلع
country, I
في أي
feel that
وقت
I
أنا
am free. I
عايزة.
want to
في
go to the
ضرورات
street
بعدين
without
لازم تطلع
anyone telling me
في
with
بنات
whom I
بيكونوا
am, what I am
شغالين
wearing.
طبيبات عندهم
And we have
نبطشات
also
بالليل،
some
في
professional
صحفيات، في
professional
ملطفات طيران
requirements
اللي
allowing
العمل بصورة
hostesses,
عامة ما عنده
doctors,
زمن
female
معين
doctors
لبعض
and female
التخصصات.
hostesses to go
فأنا اللي أكون
by
طالعة
night
وشايلة هم
at a
إنه أنا
certain
في زول
time of the
حيوقفني
day.
حيسألني
So
أو
they
أنا
all
طالعة وما
they
حاسة
all
بالأمان.
lived with this fear
الحاجة الإضافية
about
قانون
who
النظام
will
العام
stop them,
كان
who will arrest them. They did
بيتحكم
not
في فئة
feel
معينة في
secure.
المجتمع
So
اللي
this
هم النساء
public
ذات
order
الدخل
law was a bit
المحدود، اللي
harsh
هم بائعات
on
الطعام
also
والشراب
people
في
of
أرصفة الشوارع.
low income,
هم
like
سلكوا
small
الطريق ده
women
لأنه
merchants
الحكومة
and
ما كانت
traders
موفرة
living off the
لهم
street.
لقمة
Because the
لقمة عيش
government did not
هنية
allow
وقادرين
them
يحصلوا على
to
حقوقهم.
have
فالواحدة
their
بتلقى
rights
إنه
and their
من
decency.
المسؤولية اللي هي في عندها أطفال،
Those
عندها
women have
أسر بتعيلها،
children.
فشافت
They
طريق
are
تاني عشان تشتغل ده حلال
breadwinners
عشان
for
تأكل
their
وتصرف
families. So
وتربي
they
وتعلم
wanted to
وتعالج
go and
الأسر
earn their
اللي هي
bread in
بتعولها.
order to take
فاضطرت
care of their
إنها
own
تقعد
families.
إلى
And
وقت
those
متأخر في
women
الشارع عشان
are obliged to
ده
stay
شغلهم
at a
يعني.
very
فكانوا
late
بيصادروا
hour at night to be able to work. So the
الآليات
police
بتاعتهم
would
سواء
come and
كانت
would confiscate their
الكراسي أو الأعدة اللي
utensils,
هم بيشتغلوا
their
بيها.
equipment,
بتعرض نفسها
whatever
لغرامات
they would have,
وهي
like chairs and
دخلها
everything,
محدود. هي
and they
بتحاول
would
إنها
have to
تجمع
pay
عشان تقدر
fines. And those
تصرف
women have
وتمشي
really low
حاجة
income.
وتمشي حالها
They
في
are just
اليوم
working in
يعني.
order to
فبيجي
earn their bread.
النظام بيفرض عليها عقوبات،
So
بيفرض
the regime
عليها
imposes
رسوم
on
بشيء من
those
القروش
women
اللي هي
taxes,
بيتجمع
fines,
فيها.
and this is
فكيف
something
يعني أنت
that
ما
would
قدرت توفر
take
لها
from the
وهي
money that they
إفطار
are trying
وكده،
to earn.
على الأقل ما تضغط
So the
عليها،
regime
تبقى
did not allow those women to be able
تمشي
to live
عليها يعني.
decently, and at the same
فبصورة
time they
عامة
were
بعد ما تم
punishing them
إلغاؤه
for
حسينا
living or
بشوية
trying to
إنه
live
حق
decently.
النساء ده
So when this
انتصرنا جدا
law
يعني.
has been abrogated, we
وأخيرا
felt
بعد
that women
دام فترة
have
طويلة
finally
بعد
won because our struggle has lasted for years. Thank you.
Tahani Abass, when was that law enforced, and was it more for imposed in Khartoum or mostly in remote areas which are under oppression like Darfur, Nuba Mountains or Blue Nile?
قانون النظام العام هو قانون ولائي محلي للخرطوم.
Public order law is very local and related to Khartoum, and to, as Alaa said, it concerns women of marginal professions, vulnerable women such as tea sellers from the Blue Nile or Nuba Mountains, and even from other poor regions from the center.
Provisions in the criminal law of 1991 which have to do with the women's clothes and the way they work. And there are 22 specialized courts to implement this law in Khartoum itself. And you have specialized police known as the public order police, and you have it is a system, a full system, fully equipped with legislations and military people to violate women's dignity and to impose economic fees or emoluments. And this has led to many young Sudanese women to commit suicide because they have been harassed sexually in the police checkpoints or police offices, and especially in 2009. And we commemorate Mr. Hanan, who was arrested because she was wearing trousers. She entered into the court. She stood before the court or the tribunal. And I'm very proud to say that I was part of the institution that had an initiative which is the No to Women's Oppression, And we are happy that in the government of the revolution, Mr. Nasruddin, the Minister of Justice, cancelled the public order law and cancelled the provisions of this public order law that have to do with women's wearing and clothes. And as I mentioned, the husbands were arrested at the time who were working in the streets. They were arrested by the police, the street police, until they could prove that they were the husbands of the women they accompanied. So there were many violations of women's rights and human rights in general. In addition, says Mr. Alaa, there are other religions in Sudan other than the Islamic or the Islam. So women should be freed, of course, but this law was imposed on and implemented on the non-religious even, and the Christians and other faiths and religious
Alaa, this law now
groups.
is cancelled, is not anymore in use, but you consider this is enough, or what is to do for women's rights beyond this, the cancelling of this public order law? Because you have two ways to see the problem. There was a bad Islamist regime who was oppressing women. He is gone, the law is gone, everything is okay. Or this is only the start of something. For what? What is your aim into taking part into the revolution?
Actually, the greatest obstacle for us was this public order law, which restricted many of our freedoms. A woman could not speak, she could not go out to the street, she could not request and claim her rights, and therefore this public order law was cancelled, and that is a great obstacle that has been removed. Now we're asking for we can claim our rights in much greater freedom. And even during the revolution itself, while the public order law was still valid, we tried to get rid of these restrictions. Because of that public order law, we started asking for our people's rights. Women are always in the demonstrations and will be subjected to oppression, but they claimed for their rights, and we find that women were able to overcome all the political obstacles. Now, when I see these pictures, I do not see Alaa Salah. I see the courageous Sudanese woman who was struggling for more than 30 years in the Sudan, and courageously, she is the Sudanese woman.
And you, Tahani Abass, you were talking about the personal status law, which is maybe you were talking about the personal status law, which is something different. It's not only for you. It seems the public order law is not the only legal oppression of women in Sudan. So what do you hope for as in changing the status of women legally, the legal status of women?
حقيقة أنا بحيي المرأة السودانية الآن. أنا على هذا الستيج
would like to praise the Sudanese women who have been because they demonstrated before the Ministry of Justice. I praise their struggle to change the civil status law or to amend it of 1991, because that is the law of the previous regime of the deposed President Mr. Omar al-Bashir. Now this civil status or personal status law has led to many problems. For example, the law allows a small girl to be married at the age of 10. When a girl is only 10 years old, she can be married. And also the custody of children. because the custody is given to the father, and women are prevented from accompanying her children when traveling after a divorce or separation from her husband. And also the law on nationality, which does not allow a Sudanese woman to give her nationality to her children if she is married to a non-Sudanese man. And also, we have another law, which is the law of property. These are some of the laws, and that is our objective. We have been victorious to remove the public order law, but we still have another number of obstacles because we have this problem of the marriage of minor girls, and we are trying to put an end to this, and we have come with a bill, a draft law project. We would like to present our proposal to the government of the revolution, because this deprives girls from having access to education, to health services, the right to life in general, as is the case or of other children elsewhere in the world or in other places of our region. So we have our claims, and we are also informing our friends in the world. We would like to see what is the situation with regards to former agreements that we have signed, like CEDAW, the CEDAW Convention, and even the African Charter of Human Rights and People's Rights. So we were quite mindful as women to participate politically according to the inclusions of what was included in, or stipulated in the conventions. And although the document said that women can participate at all levels of the politics, but at a level of 40% only, and that was, but women have been raped and have been oppressed.
This is the transition charter provision that women will form 40% of the parliament.
40% for 40% للبرلمان.
40% for the parliament and 40% for the cabinet, and the sovereign council,
which is not the case.
Well, that is below the ambition of women in Sudan. And there are 4 ministers amongst 24 ministers,
So this is
or
not
24
40%,
ministries, or 28
obviously.
ministries.
About حوالي 11%.
No, about 11 or 17%. And even that we did not obtain easily, because women were marginalized and they were left aside. So we had a number of processions and parades. So we can't have women having participate during duress and difficulties and not participate after what we have achieved, because women have been in processions until she was represented as she is today.
Are there still demonstrations from women regularly to obtain at least these 40%, which are not enough, but 40% that was written in the charter?
You mean women in particular? The demonstrations in general still continue. What's different now is that before you had demonstrations that were facing oppression. Today we are listened to. So we come up with a memorandum to the concerned ministry, and we say that there are these provisions. So some processions have been received by ministries or ministers that listen to us, and even promise, although we haven't seen much in reality, but at least we are listened to and promises are made. Mrs. Tahani, we had a certain number of initiatives that led up to a memorandum which was the No to Women's Oppression, and we presented this to the prosecutor, went to the prosecutor. They took us from the prosecutor's office to the police, and we were arrested at the time. Now it is easier for us. For example, I met a number of women's movements, Sayyid Hamdallah Hamdok, the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdullah Hamdok, the Prime Minister. I've met him 3 times. The Cabinet's office is open. I even met Mr. Nasruddin on the 29th as I was going to Beirut. He's the Minister of Justice. And as Alaa has already mentioned, it is easy for us to meet the people in charge. But we want more political will. We do not want only people to listen to us. We want a political and effective political will that enables women to effectively participate. And during the Omar al-Bashir's regime, there were just 52 women who were just puppets. But we want active, true participation, which would represent our victory. We want women who can be at positions of decision making, because this is what Sudanese women deserve.
Do you feel supported by men in your demands, or do you think that we reach a stage where they say, okay, that's enough, thank you very much for participating into demonstrations, but there are traditions, come on, just go back home.
At the beginning of the revolution, and when we wrote down the charter of the Forces for Freedom and Change, the FFC, Forces for Freedom and Change, I was a representative to coordinate between women's movements and this Forces for Freedom and Change. And this patriarchal regime, and I'm a mother of 2 children. I take care of my mother. I have a husband. So the meetings started at midnight, and there was no sensitivity with regards to the time, because that was one of the reasons where I always said meetings should take place at a time which is appropriate for us, whether in the morning or the afternoon or the early evening. And all the meetings took place at the same time. Now, this might be a way to keeping us away from the political scene as a patriarchal mindset. As Alaa said, I was in the first committee, 8+1. We were with the military people and people from the political parties and the youth movement. And I praise the young women who participated in negotiations. And this is one of the... Now, people might be saying silently, thank you for your participation. We see this in their reactions when we say that we need this or that, when we have our claims and we have to be represented in this or that committee. So there is a silent response, which means thank you. You have to go back to your homes. Thank you. You were the reason for the success of the revolution. Your role has ended. But no, the Sudanese women is quite aware, and this was positive because we saw young women's movements, new movements for young women. Now the Sudanese women's scene is very rich with these movements where women are claiming things, and they are from different levels, maybe either to reform the laws or for political participation or with regards to resolution 1325 from the Security Council and the peace process that is hosted by the South Sudan. And 27 women participated. They are at the negotiating table with the armed parties. And so all these are victories thanks to the great revolution of December. But I'd like to say truthfully, there is a patriarchal regime with a men's mindset that wants to keep women away from the political scene. But of course, they have to tell the outer world that we are for women, we are supporting women. But we, the women's movement is very united, as is our river, the Great Nile.
Salah, you were saying something?
I do agree with her on everything that she has said. As women, we are now more aware about our rights and how we can claim those rights. We have united and we started to work as one hand, and we have been able to continue our struggle, and we will do so until we get all our rights amongst all challenges.
Do you see among young men a new kind of sensibility or a new way to deal with women, or do you think Sudan, even the young Sudanese men, are still very patriarchal?
No. This is what we said in the demonstrations and in the sit-ins before the General Command, how young people today are dealing with us as their brothers, as brothers and sisters. Even when the regime's forces would start to be oppressive against us, the young man would come to us and tell us, go home now, we will protect you, or go home. So we felt as if it was one struggle. But they would say, you are girls, you are women, please be cautious. And this is based on my personal experience, something that I have seen in the sit-ins, in the demonstrations. The young men today are able to accept girls and women. They have accepted the role that we are playing and what we are looking up to, and I think that they are quite understanding today.
Do you think this 40% rule, which is already not respected in the government or in the Sovereign Council, shall it be, this is a minimum, or it should be more? Why not 50%?
We do have one slogan. We want all our rights without complacency. So we have to take all our rights and we have to claim those rights fully. So I think that the percentage in the Sovereign Council is very weak. It was not satisfactory at all in the past. And we had first the presence of the military present in the Sovereign Council. We had as well the Janjaweed and the military forces. All those were challenges that women have been faced with, and the victims were women and the women's participation in power. This is why we have been represented by Mrs. Rajani Kola Abdel Masih as well as Mrs. Aisha Musa. In the Sovereign Council, we had also also female ministers in the cabinet. But this percentage is still very low. And the government of the transitional period is committed towards the constitutional paper, which is the one that has to govern the transitional period in Sudan. And we are trying to achieve better results at the local level. So far, there was no parliament as we wanted, although the parliament should have been established 3 months after the transition started. But so far, it was not the case. But regarding the local governance in the provinces, we hope that the women movement would get this. We are at the grassroots. As women, we'd rather to work on the ground at the grassroots level in the different provinces of Sudan. Sudan is a very large country. I come from the rural areas in Sudan. And Sudan is a very diversified, very large country. It has different cultures, different religions. Even the color of our skin is different. So we hope that the women movement will be able to come up with the greatness that they have at the local level. It doesn't mean that we don't want to be anymore in the sovereign council or in the government or in the center. No, but we want also our role to be very strong at the local level.
Alaa, I have a question for you, which is, do you feel in the US, in Europe, you have this big Me Too movement. Do you feel it's part of the same struggle, or it is something which is very far from your kind of preoccupation? Or are you exchanging on the internet with other women activists in the Arab world and outside the Arab world, in Africa, in America, in Europe? Or so is it the same story that is happening in Europe, in the US, in Sudan? Or is it part of the same feminist movement? Or each society, it's so different that it has its own preoccupations?
All women in the world, they have their problems, they have their issues, and they are specific. What we can do is that we have to launch campaigns such as Me Too and other campaigns, because those campaigns allow them to respond to those challenges that they are faced with. They wanted to have their claims achieved. So every region has its specific challenges, and it has every way of dealing with it. If you compare women in Africa with women in Europe and in the States, you see that every country, as every region, they have their own specificities and they have their own issues or causes. Even in Africa, women in Sudan have different problems than women in Ethiopia or Egypt or others. When I talk about Sudan, it's not only Khartoum, but women in Darfur, they have also different issues, specific causes. And in the north, women have other specific issues. Me Too is a campaign allowing women to have their voices heard, to claim their rights, full rights, and to show their cause to the world, showcase their cause to the world. So appellations are different and differ in every region according to those causes.
And now, before we switch to the questions of our viewers, I have a last question for you, Tahani. It is to the lawyer. Rape was used as a tool of war, as a weapon, especially in Darfur. Not only, but especially in Darfur. Do you hope that one day those people who launched that war on women in Darfur will be taken to court in Sudan or in the International Criminal Court? And do you think it is possible to expose this crime in a very traditional society where rape is a shame as well for the women who to whom it was inflicted? I know it's a difficult issue.
This is the question that I was afraid that you would ask me. I'm very proud to be the only citizen where in 2014, during the Debat village events or incidents that have been raided by the Janjaweed, the RFS, under Musa Hilal and others. So in this village, 203 women have been raped. This is in one village, the Debat village. And this crime has been documented. And we have the folder today that has reached the ICC, and we have people that are wanted for this crime. For me, the main challenge that I see, and I was talking to Mr. Nabil Adib, who is a lawyer and a member in a committee that is looking into such crimes. I feel, and as women, we feel in Sudan that there should not be impunity. We are afraid of having impunity because impunity will be a major concern for us. Even on this platform, I can say today that so far the armed forces, paramilitary forces or militias have not been condemned. Not one individual of them has been condemned and convicted so far. Although the crime of rape has been documented, we had all the evidence, all the details supporting and confirming that there have been cases of women and girls that have been raped. Despite all this, no one has been condemned, especially in ordinary rape, not rape as a tool used in conflicts and in war. And we had a lot of victims that have fallen prey to those cases, and some girls and even young women have committed suicide. And this is because this concern we have of impunity. We have paid the sacrifice, paid a high price. Our integrity has been at stake, and even though sometimes the people who have committed those crimes of rape are known, and we have videotapes, and we have high-resolution tapes that have been taken, and those tapes have been analyzed, and everything has been documented. Despite of this, nothing. And I'm very happy because one communique has been issued by Médecins Sans Frontières in Geneva, and they have issued a full report about that. But so far, we haven't heard that any of those individuals have been convicted or condemned. So impunity, I think, is something that threatens the feminist movement, and we hope with our partners from the international community, from the government of the revolution, that the laws would be amended and that girls and women would be protected in public spheres, and that women will be able to participate in political affairs and public affairs, because we want to preserve our safety and integrity. I have met with 30 women that have been raped at the General Command offices, and we have documented everything. Unfortunately, nothing has happened. And this is one of the things that make us not really happy about what happened. We are on March 8, it's March 8 today, but I am not really happy. I am optimistic that one day there will be no impunity and that the perpetrators will be brought to justice, and that the human nature of women would be preserved. There are women that have been raped. There are even young girls that have been raped. So I hope that we will restore this image and human nature that we have. As you said, rape has been used as a tool to break down the opposition. I have three friends of mine that have been subjected to those horrible crimes, but we haven't lost the spirit of opposition. They have been subjected to rape. So the rape tool was used as a weapon to break down the the opposition, in Sudan. But we were able to stand up thanks to the struggle of women. I am a member in the regional coalition for the defense of women's rights. I am also a member in different campaigns and movements, including the No to Women's Oppression campaign or initiative. So all women in the world, they say that we are here by you, by your side. And this was a good space for us to recover.
So you feel solidarity of other feminist movements in the Arab world, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, trying to help you, working with you, or exchanging experience, views, or anything. You feel that?
The regional coalition for women rights defenders is there. We have also centers in Egypt, like the Women's Studies Center, and we have also another movement in Beirut. And I would like also to thank Dr. Amani in particular for what she did regarding women rights in Syria. We have also another movement in Yemen. Those, yes. In Europe, I'm not aware of what is there in terms of movements, but at the personal level, I have met with Mrs. Michelle Forrest in Tunisia. So the issue of solidarity is there. It's a real change. It's a kind of support that will make us think and feel that we are not on our own, that the world can see Sudanese women, their sacrifices, what they have given, how they participated, and where is the Sudanese woman today, and how her voice can be reached and heard everywhere. But we feel this solidarity because whenever we have a statement or a Twitter on any official account, we feel that there is solidarity with women around the world. Let's say we support women's struggle in Sudan. 216 feminist leaders have been arrested on December 25th till March 8th. So all those women leaders have been imprisoned. But we have received statements of support from the international community that they are supporting the cause of women in Sudan. So we felt in prison that we are not on our own, that the world is seeing us and is supporting the women movement.
It was last year. Do you have any women activists in prison now, today? It's over?
No.
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 Maybe we have some questions now from the audience, the remote audience. So, a question for Alaa, Salah. How is your life today? How does it feel to be one day a student and the next day of a symbol for hope and freedom? Did you get the question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
How can you hear me now?
Again.
Yeah.
How is your life today? Is it difficult to be one day a student and then the next day a symbol for freedom and hope? And is it something which is difficult in your daily life because you cannot being a symbol and a student, a normal citizen?
Before the revolution, we didn't have any political orientation, or we didn't work politically because the former regime kept away fully the young people from the political sphere. But with the beginning of the revolution, politics became part of our life, And we're always thinking about the political process in Sudan, what will happen, the revolution, the processions, the campaigns. And the politics became part of our life from the very first day of the revolution. I stopped studies on the first day of revolution on the 19th of December 2018. That was my last day of studying. Then we involved ourselves in the processes. All universities were closed down, whether in the private sector or the public sector. The situation was unsafe in the Sudan. The street was unsafe, and the situation was difficult. And of course, the universities in these private sector also suffered from difficult situation. We couldn't be studying at the expense of the martyrs' blood, because everybody was dying everywhere, in the marketplace, in the Razi University, which is very close from the university in which I studied. On the 24th of January, one of my fellow students was beaten up. So there were, as a reaction from the students, we stopped studying. The universities also put pressures on us and told us we might lose a year if we did not resume our studies. But when I participated in the demonstrations, I couldn't suddenly say I have to go back to study. We couldn't study at the expense of the martyrs' sacrifices and blood. How can we go back and study when people were sacrificing themselves? It was a cause that required that I defend, and I couldn't go back to study. So I stopped a whole year's study. I continued my political action during the revolution. I tried to bring or to raise the voice, give a voice to the revolution outside Sudan. I'm supposed to go back and graduate because I like to work in architecture, and I should go back and resume my studies in architecture and graduate. I never thought one day that I will do what I did, but I have now a mission, and I have to carry out this mission. It's going to be difficult to find a compromise between my need to study and my need to work in the political sphere.
Another question, which is, do you think that the revolution will bring peace, unity, and political representation for in Sudan, especially for places which were at war, like Darfur and Nuba Mountains? And I will add another question for you, which is, do you think with more women in power, you will have less wars in Sudan?
This question will allow me to praise those who are working currently in Juba, the capital of South Sudan, which is currently hosting the negotiations, to ask them to be serious and to have a true political will to implement the peace requirements, because the two regions, which is the Blue Nile and the Nubian Mountains and Darfur, have witnessed wars for many years, and women in these regions were subject to bombardment. Women in Darfur were raped. Until this, the militias had their freedom, and we hope that this is maybe the only chance for Sudan to embark on a true peace process that would lead to stability in the region, not that would lead to separation as we have seen during the CBA, which led to the split of the Sudan. And here I am on the 8th of March, I'm calling upon others so that those in charge carry out their duties with all due respect to them, but that they always think of the country first and not think about their political acquisitions or their shares or who will become a minister and who will become a governor, that they think of the country first and that they value the blood that was shed in Darfur, in the Blue Nile region, and that they respond to the peace requirements. Yes, the presence of women in the core of the political process and having to abide to the Security Council Resolution 1325 will contribute in disseminating peace, because women have lost their children, they have lost their husbands in the war, they are displaced, and they are refugees, and they are in refugee camps and displacement camps. So the presence of women, of many women in the political process or peace process, will actively contribute. And I say this not because I'm biased and I'm against being biased in favor of women, but I'd like to say, or I believe, that if there are many women in managing the political process, there will be a sustainable peace while ensuring just distribution of wealth and development, sustainable development in all the regions that have been marginalized for many years.
I have a very, very last question for you both. In one sentence, each of you, what is your message to the world as a Sudanese revolutionary feminist who succeeded in your revolution? What is the message? What do you think you can bring to the world on this 8th of March? What is your message?
Mrs. Tahani, thank you. I praise Alaa from here because she managed, as a young woman, to draw the attention of the world that she is not Alaa Salah, but she's a Sudanese woman. Here is a Sudanese woman who is resisting, who has her
strengths.
Who has a forceful personality. And on the 8th of March, I would like to call upon all our friends and partners in the world to support the transitional period in Sudan. We in the Sudan are facing three genuine problems. You have military people in politics. The economic crisis is directly linked to the sanctions imposed on the Sudan and also impeding the developmental projects. The sanctions on Sudan, we have not been the cause of the problems. The problems caused due to the former regime. We have gone forward with guaranteeing the freedom of religion, combating terrorism, many things that are related to the sanctions imposed on Sudan. My call is to support the transitional government and to support us with ideas and projects, because the Sudan has been reborn For 30 years, we have been the victim of an oppressive, corrupt system. And because of that former regime, we are subject to sanctions, which are very harsh. And I hope the World Bank will be mindful of our current situation, because our economic situation is very bad. We have no petrol, no gas, we have no bread, we have no wheat, and the Sudanese people is suffering from an economic crisis. Now, this is my personal invitation. I'd like everybody to help us how we can find an equilibrium between the military people and the civilian people, and we have to deal with each other. We have I call upon the international community to support the Sudan, to understand the transitional period in the Sudan so that we can move forward towards a democratic phase that will contribute to establishing a study that deserves to be established. Thank you. I praise what my colleague has said, and the world has to look at the Sudan differently, because the Sudan is different before the revolution and after the revolution. All the obstacles we suffered from, the economic crisis, some countries were supporting terrorism in our country, and the world has to understand that this is a new Sudan, and the people of Sudan have claims for freedom. Any support that we can get is welcomed. Whatever is in the interest of the people, first and foremost, before it is in any support from any party will be welcomed, as long as this is in favor of the Sudanese citizen and the Sudanese people, first and foremost.
Thank you very, very much for this very interesting and moving debate sometimes. Now I invite you all to watch the ceremony of the Martin Anstedt Prize, which will be given today to Tahani Abass for her accomplishment into as a woman activist for years and years, and her successes, because it has some important results.
I was say thank you to مترجمين.
I would like to thank the interpreters.
مترجمين.
Says Mrs. Tahani. Thank you to those who have provided us with technical support. The photographers. We're happy to see such a woman as Mrs. Tahani reach such a success. Thank you.